Hello guys, welcome back to my channel, and right now I'm going to go over DHCP, the basics, and basically I'll explain to you what's a DHCP server used for, and the different components within it. So DHCP stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. Every computer on a network has to have an IP address. There are two ways that a computer can be assigned an IP address. The first way is called static IP and dynamic IP address. IP. Static IP is where the admin will assign a permanent IP address to a machine, like, for example, if you have a printer and you want that printer to have the same IP address each and every time, you will assign a static IP address to the printer. Now, if you have the other way DHCP assigns IP addresses is called dynamic IP address. And dynamic IP addresses are assigned by the DHCP server automatically as soon as a machine or device is switched on. A dynamic IP address is where the computer gets an IP address from the DHCP server. The DHCP server automatically assigns the computer an IP address, subnet mask, default gateway, and DNS server. Yes. So it's best to have a DHCP server assign IP addresses automatically. Otherwise, what happens is this can end up causing an IP conflict, which will cause two computers to have no network access. Once your DHCP server has assigned an IP address to your computer, you can open up CMD command prompt and run IP config / all to check the IP address assigned. Now I'm going to go over DHCP scope. DHCP server assigns IP addresses using its scope. A scope is basically a range of IP addresses which the DHCP server can hand out to computers. So, as you can see on screen, you just go back here, find better. Something like this. You see this over here? That's the scope. So anything between this range, the DHCP server can, the above scope, the scope on the screen, be able to assign IP addresses. You can give IP addresses out. The scope range is customizable, but the network admin will have to decide, what range they would have to have, what range they would like to have. So now I want to talk about the DHCP lease. So the DHCP lease, as you can see on the screen, the DHCP servers lease IP addresses to computers for a set amount of time. Leasing makes sure that the DHCP server does not run out of IP addresses. So, for example, a computer like you have this one over here, this is the lease process. So there we go. So basically, if you have like two computers, let's say this, and the DHCP server assigns an IP address to them, it'll say, okay, for a couple hours you can have this IP address, and after the computer switches off, lease would the computer that the IP address was assigned to will release that IP address. So the lease expires. So when they switch back on, they'll be assigned a new IP address. DHCP reservations. A reservation ensures that a specific computer or device will always be given the same IP addresses. In DHCP settings, you can create a reservation. When your device comes online, the DHCP server will recognize your MAC address because you have put it in the reservation settings, like you can see on the screen. Then assign whatever IP address you have chosen to be assigned to that device. Reservations are generally assigned to special devices. It's typical for special devices like such as like network printers, servers, routers, specific computers to have a reserved IP address. So DHCP, to end it all up, wrap it all up, DHCP is a service that runs on a server such as a Microsoft server or Linux server, and it's also a service that runs on routers. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what DHCP servers are. These are the basics of DHCP servers. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching. Thank you. Bye.